Good evening, everyone. I'm Sathwika from CSC department. In this presentation, we are going to discuss about control state structures. The contents of control structures are as follows: conditional control structures, control structures, and unconditional control structures. Coming back to conditional control structures, it deals with if condition, if else condition, if else if ladder condition, and switch case statement. Moving on to loop control structures, it deals with for loop, while loop, do while loop, and nested for loop. Next, further moving on to unconditional control structures, it deals with go to statements, break statement, and continue statement. Coming back to the introduction of conditional statements, the conditional statements are used to execute a set of statements on some conditions. It provides a unit of block in which we can either execute one statement or more than one statement. If the given condition is true, then the set of statements are executed. Otherwise, the body is skipped. Next, moving on to the C statements. In C statements, we obtain control statements, and further control statements are divided into three branches. There are selection statements, iteration statements, and jump statements. Coming to selection statements, it deals with if else, and switch case statements. And coming back to iteration statements, it deals with for loop, while loop, and do while loop. Coming to jump statements, it deals with break, continue, and return. Now moving on to flowchart part. Flowchart, we have symbols, oval, rectangle, diamond, parallelogram, and flow line. In this oval, it, it is used to describe about the beginning and end of the flowchart. And rectangular, it is used to determine the processing of the flowchart. Diamond, it is used for decision making. And the parallelogram, it is used for input and output. And finally, the flow line, it represents the program of a flow chart. The flow line, it represents that it should be more, the program should move to the next step, and from start the flow line, it indicates that next step, that is processing step, is executed, and then input or data is executed, and then decision making, processing step, and finally stop. Here, start, it is represented by an oval, whereas processing step is represented by rectangle. And for diamond and for parallelogram, it is used for input or output of data. Diamond is represented for decision making, and the processing step is represented by rectangle. And finally, oval represents stop. Now coming to decision making. Decision making is used to specify the order in which the statements are executed. Decision making in C programming involves mainly if statement, if else statement, if else statement. It is also known as if else ladder statement, nested if else statement, and switch case statement. Now coming to if condition. It is conditional statement which is used to execute a set of statements on some conditions. The condition must be of Boolean type. An expression which returns only two value, either true or false, is known as Boolean type of expression. Now coming to the syntax of if statement. it is as follows. If condition, statement, semicolon, the above syntax is used for a single statement. A set of statements can also be made conditional. In this case, these statements are written in curly braces. The set of statements is also called compound statement. The syntax for compound statements is as follows. If condition, open flower braces, statement 1, in statement 2 followed by statement 3, semicolon, statement 4, semicolon, up to statement n, close flower braces. In the next step, this is the flow chart of if condition. Here arrow line, it indicates the next step in the flow chart, that is condition. Condition, it is represented by diamond symbol since it is a decision making process. Then further, if the given condition is true, then statement S is executed. If it is false, then if statement is ended, it is terminated at then and there itself. And if the statement is true, then if condition is closed. This is the flow chart of if statement. If the test expression is false, then the statement just below if it is executed. If the test expression is true, the statement just below if is executed. If the test expression is false, then body of if gets executed. Now to write a program that inputs two numbers and to find whether they both are equal or not. This is the program. Here, output, if we enter a number, for example, 15, and if we enter other number, that is B, then the output gets displayed as both numbers are equal. Now moving on to example, the second example, it is a program to display a number. If the user enters negative number, then the number won't be displayed since the program takes only positive values. Hence, the test expression is true if the number is less than 0. If number is if number is greater than 0. Now, moving on to if-else condition. If-else condition, it is also known as double block conditional statement. It has two parts, that is true part as well as a false part. If the given condition is true, then the true part is executed. Otherwise, the false part gets executed. Now coming to the syntax of if-else condition. If condition statement semicolon, else statement semicolon. Two or more statements are written in curly brackets. The syntax for compound statement in if in this statement is as follows. If condition, open flower braces, statement 1, statement 2, up to statement n, close flower braces, else. And statement 1, statement 2, statement n. Here, if condition is true, then first two n statements are executed, or else in other case, if the conditions are false, then this statement gets executed since the cursor moves outside of the loop. This is the flowchart of if-else condition. If the condition is true, then statement 1 gets executed. If the condition is false, then statement 2 gets executed. Now, moving on to the example, to write a program that inputs a number and to find whether it is even or odd using if-else structure. This is a program. Here we have to initial a number n, and the count must be, and the count is number. If n percentile 2 is equal to 0, then count n is even, else count n is odd. Here we are entering a value a. Now, when we enter a value a, suppose for example, let's consider 10, the output gets displayed on the screen as 10 is even. Moving on to other example. If a equals b, then printf percentile d equals percentile d a comma b, else printf percentile d is not equal percentile d a comma b. Here, if this condition a equals b satisfies, then this statement printf gets executed, or else in other case, the other after else, the statement immediately below else, this printf, it gets executed. Now, moving on to a complete example on conditional if-else statement. This is the program. Here we have to initialize a number and then input a number. If the number is greater than 0, then printf, this is a positive integer. Else, remaining portion of the statement. This is not a positive integer. Try again gets printed. Now coming on to sequential if-then statements. If a equals b, then printf a equals b. If a equals c, printf a equals c. If b equals c, printf b equals c. And multi-way if-else statement. This is the syntax. If expression of 1, statement 1, if this expression of 1 is true, then statement 1 gets executed. Else, if expression of 2 is true, then statement 2 gets executed. Else, if expression n is true, then statement n gets executed. If expression of 1 is true, and here statement 1 gets executed. So again, else if expression 2, the control doesn't move here. Since this is the statement, it gets executed first. And then after later, if the statement is false, then only else if expression 2 gets executed. Now moving on to multi-way if-else statement example. This is the example. Have to initialize a number and input score, percentile D number. If the number is greater than or equal to 90, then printf grade excellent. Else, if the number is greater than or equal to 80, ampersand number is less than 90, then print grade is very good. Else, if the number is greater than 60, ampersand number is less than 80, then print the grade is good. Else, if the number is greater than 50, ampersand number is less than 60, printf grade is average. Else, if the number is greater than minus 40, ampersand number is less than 50, print grade is poor. Else, printf grade not promoted. Now, in this case, if the number is greater than or equal to 90, then the grade excellent gets printed. If this condition is not true, then the next statement, number greater than or equal to 80, the grade very good gets printed. And then if both the statements are not true, then the grade is good gets executed. If all these three statements are not true, then the fourth statement, grade is average, gets executed. Next, the if else statement, it executes same code if the text expression is true or non-zero, and some other code if the text expression is false. This is the syntax for if else statement. If text expression codes inside the body of if else, codes inside the body of else. If the text expression is true, then the statement which is below if gets executed. So the code which is inside the body of if gets executed. If the text expression is false, then the statement which is below else get executed, or the code inside the body of else get executed. Here, if the text expression is false, body of else get executed. If it is true, body of if gets executed. And then the statement just below if else get executed. If it is true, it's the same step statement which is just below if gets executed. In this case, statement which is just below else get executed. Next, moving on to the example of if else statement. It is a program to check whether an integer entered by the user is odd or even. Then initialize the number, enter an integer, scanf percentile d ampersand number. It is an even number if the remainder is 0 and if number is divided by 2. Then printf it is an even integer, else print percentile d is an odd integer, number return 0. Since here int main is written, we have to write return 0, or else in condition of void main, there is no need to write return 0. Now moving on to if else statement. The if else statement executes two different codes depending upon whether the text expression is true or false. Sometimes a choice has to be made from more than two possibilities. The if else statement allows a user to check for multiple text expressions and execute two different codes for more than two conditions. Now syntax for if else statement. If text expression 1, then statements to be executed if text expression 1 is true. Else, if text expression 2 is concerned, then statements are executed if the text expression 1 is false and text expression 2 is true. Else, if text expression 3 gets executed, the statements are executed if the text expression 1 and text expression 2 are false, and the text expression 3 must be true. Else, the statements are executed if all the text expression statements are false. Now, the program to relate two integers using equal, greater, or less than relational operators. Initialize number 1 and 2, and then enter two integers. Scanf, it checks if two integers are equal. If number 1 equals number 2, then printf result percentile d equals percentile d. That is, number 1 equals number 2. Here, printf checks if the number 1 is greater than number 2. Else, if both the text expressions are false, then the number 1 and number 2, either they may be greater than 1, number 1 might be greater than 2, or number 1 might be less than 2. It holds true only when the first condition, if condition, is false. Now moving on to nested if else statement. Nested if else statement, it is same like if else statement. One new block of if else statement is defined in existing if or else block statement. It is used when a user wants to check more than one conditions at a time. This is the syntax of nested if else statement. If the condition is true, then statement 1, if the test condition 1 is true, and then immediately the control goes for testing test condition 2. If the test condition 2 is true, then the cursor moves to statement 1 inside the test condition 2. If the test condition 2 is true, then statement 1 gets executed, or else the cursor or the control, it moves to else, and inside the else, the statement 2, it gets executed. Else, if both the test conditions 1 and 2 are false, the third statement gets executed. If all the three statements are false, then the X statement gets executed. Next, moving on to the example of nested if else statement. Here we are using a username. Since username, it is not of integer type nor of float type or a double type, it is a character type. So we have to mention specifically which data type we are using. Here we are using a character data type username. So we have to initialize password, then printf username, scanf percentile C username, printf password, scanf percentile D password, and if the username it is equal to A, then the password 12123455, then the printf login is successful. These two conditions, these two if conditions must satisfy in order to print that login is successful. Else, printf password is incorrect and try again. Else, printf username is incorrect and try again. Since here for the first if condition, this is a statement 1 login is successful. If this condition holds wrong, then the cursor moves to else condition. If this condition holds wrong, then the cursor moves to the third condition, that is username is incorrect. If all these three statements are wrong, then statement username is incorrect gets executed and try again. Now moving to loop control structures. Moving on to loops. Loops are used in programming to repeat a specific block until some end condition is met. There are three loops in C programming language: for loop, while loop, do while loop, and nested loops. Now, in computer programming, a loop is nothing but a sequence of instructions that is continually repeated until a certain condition is reached. Programming languages provides various control structures that allow for more complicated execution paths. Loop control statements change execution from its normal sequence. When execution leaves a scope, all automatic objects that were created in that scope are destroyed. A loop statement allows us to execute a statement or a group of statements multiple times, and following is a general form of a loop statement in most of the programming languages. Conditional code, if the condition is true, this is a given condition. If the condition is true, then conditional code gets executed, or if the condition is false, then that's the end of loop. Now there are different types of loop known as while loop, for loop, do while loop, and nested loop. We're going to discuss all the loops in brief. While loop is nothing but it repeats a statement or group of statements while a given condition is true. It tests the condition before executing the loop body. So gets the condition gets tested before before the execution of the loop body. And for loop, it executes a sequence of statements multiple times and abbreviates the code that manages the loop variable. Do while loop, like a while statement, it is same as a while statements with the same syntax as well, but the difference is here the condition is tested before executing the body of loop. Here the body of loop gets executed first and then the condition is tested like a while statement, except that it does the condition at the end of the loop body. A nested loop, you can use one or more loop inside any other while, for, or do while loop. Now the syntax for loop is as follows. The syntax for a for loop in C programming language is for initialization, condition, increment or decrement statements. Here, if the for condition holds true, then the block statement gets executed, or else the control will go out of the block statement, and then the statement which is outside of the loop, it gets executed. In a computer science, for a loop, it is a for loop is a programming language statement which allows code to be repeatedly executed. Loop in the sense it gets repeatedly executed. This is a flowchart for loop. The start, then initialize I value equals 0. If I is less than or equals 5, if it is true, then I gets executed and it gets incremented by I plus plus. If this condition is false, then that's the end of the test and the program gets terminated then and there itself. This is a program to store 10 real numbers using for loop. Here initialize I variable and float x. Since this float is considered, we can treat this as a real number since it is a combination of both rational and irrational numbers. And then enter 10 real numbers for I equals 0, I less than 10, and I plus plus. This initialization, and it is a condition, it is increment or decrement. Then scanf, and then printf, and then hit run. This is the output. And the syntax of for loop, it's initialization, test expression, update statement. If it is, if this, if the condition inside a for loop, it is true, then the statement gets executed, or else the control goes outside of this flower braces and this code gets executed. Now, moving on to for loop flowchart. This is initialization statement. If after initializing the statement, it the arrow line, it moves to test expression, and before the text expression, the statement has to be updated, or else if the first the text expression is executed. If the text expression is true, then the body of for loop gets executed. Then after that, it moves to update statement. The statement gets updated there. Now, after updating the statement, it further moves to test expression. If the text expression is true, then the same process repeats again and again since it's a loop. So it includes the repeated statements. And if the text expression is false, then that's the exit of loop. And further, the program gets terminated. Now, moving on to example for loop. This is a program to calculate the sum of first and natural numbers. The positive integers 1, 2, 3 up to n are known as positive numbers. Then for loop, it terminates when n value is less than count. For count equals 1, count less than or equals n, and the count is incremented by 1. Here, whenever the count value becomes less than n, then and there itself the loop gets terminated. This is the program. Here initialize n count and sum equals 0. Then printf enter a positive integer, scanf, then sum equals sum plus count, and sum equals sum, then return 0. Since we have mentioned int main here, return 0 should also be written, or else there might be a syntax error in the program. If void main is mentioned here, then there is no need to write return 0. Now moving on to while loop. This is a syntax for while loop. While text expression, open flower braces, code, and close flower braces. If the text expression is false, then statement just below while gets executed. Otherwise, if test expression is true, then body of while loop gets executed. Now, example for a while loop. It is a program to find factorial of a given number for a positive integer n, factorial 1 into 2 into 3 up to n. This is a program. Initialize a number, factorial, and then enter an integer. Factorial, it should be incremented or it should be initialized to 1. Then later it is incremented. Here the loop gets terminated whenever a number is less than or equal to 0. While number is greater than 0, factorial equals factorial into number. Factorial equals number, then printf factorial percentile d factorial, and then return 0. This is the syntax of while loop. The syntax of while loop in C programming language is initialization, while condition, statement, increment or decrement. Here first the condition is checked. After checking the condition, then the statement or the block statement gets executed. Then later the statement gets incremented by 1 unit. A while loop statement in C programming language, it repeatedly executes a target statement as long as a given condition is true. This is a flowchart for a while loop statement. Start, it is represented by oval. Then j equals -5, it is the input. Now j, if is j less than or equal to 0, it is a decision making process. If it is true, then print j, or else if it is false, then stop. Here the program gets terminated. If the condition is true, then here j gets incremented by 1, and then further the j gets printed, then the program gets terminated. In case of false, automatically the program gets terminated. All the steps are not executed further. And this is a program using while loop. Here, while c is less than or equal to b, b equals d into a, and c is incremented by 1. And this is the output. Now further moving on to do while loop. Unlike for and while loops, which test the loop condition at the top of the loop, the do while loop is somehow different from that two loops, since the flowchart of while and for loop are exactly the same up to some extent. Here, do while loop, it shows a mild variation in few steps, and the rest of program is same as that of while loop. The do while loop in C programming languages, it just checks the condition at the bottom of the loop, while a while loop checks the condition at the top of the loop. A do while loop is similar to a while loop, except that a do while loop is guaranteed to execute at least one time. This is a programming using do while loop with its output. Do while loop, it is similar to while loop with only one important difference. The body of do while loop is executed once before checking the text expression. The do while loop is executed at least once in the program. This condition, these three conditions should be satisfied for a do while loop. The syntax of a do while loop, it goes in this manner. Do open flower braces, the code, while text expression, then body of the loop. If the text expression is true, the further body of the loop gets executed. If it is false, then statement just below loop gets executed. Now, example for a do while loop. It is a program to add numbers until it enters 0. Double numbers, sum is 0. Then loop of body is executed at least once. Here do printf enter a number, scanf ampersand number, sum equals sum plus number. While number is not equal 0, printf sum is equals sum percentile 2, then return 0. Next, moving on to nested loops. The syntax for nested loop statement in C is as follows. For initialization, condition, increment. For initialization, condition, and decrement, the statement it is execute. If this statement is true, then the statement that is below for loop gets executed. If this condition is false, then automatically the cursor it goes to outside of the loop, and the statement which is at outside of the loop, that is statement 2, gets executed. And then the syntax for nested while and do while loop, it is as follows. While condition, if this while condition satisfied, the statement inside the loop, this condition, the statement gets executed. In the same way, if the second while condition satisfies, the statement which is outside of the loop, the second statement gets executed. And the same goes with do while loop as well. In do while loop, if the statement 1 is statement 1, it is printed, and then next the statement 2 gets printed. After that, the condition gets checked. That is, while condition 1 is true, then here the cursor moves to statement 1, and the statement 1 gets executed. While the condition 2 is true, the cursor moves to statement 2, and the statement 2 gets executed. And now moving on to a program using nested for loop. This is a program. For I equals 0, I less than or equals 4, I plus plus. For j equals 0, j less than or equals I, and j plus plus. For I equals 0, for I less than or equals to 4, and I plus plus. For j equals 4, for j greater than or equals I, and j minus minus. These are the output of the given program. Now, the nested loops in C programming allows us to use one loop inside another loop. The syntax for loop for initialization, condition, and increment. For initialization, condition, or decrement. If in case of for loop, if the given statement or the block statement is true, then inside the loop, whatever the statements are there, then they get executed. In other cases, if the given statement or if the condition for loop it is false, then the cursor it automatically moves outside of the loop, and the statement which is it, which is at the outside of loop, all the statements gets executed. The statements which are outside of loop, all the statements gets executed. Statement which is inside the loop, it gets executed if only the statement or the statements which are inside loop gets executed only when the condition the given condition holds true. In all the other cases, this in all the other cases, the statements which are outside of the loop that gets executed. Now, moving on to nested loops, syntax is this is a conditional loop. Syntax while loop, while condition, open flower braces, while condition. If this while condition, particularly while condition is true, then statement one or all the statements which are inside the statement gets executed. If the condition is false, then automatically the cursor moves to condition 2, and the statement the cursor comes outside of the loop if both the statements holds false. That is, the statement which is outside the loop gets executed, or the set of statements which are outside the loop gets executed. We may either consider a single statement or multiple statements according to our wish. This is syntax for do while loop. Do statements and then do statements. Here, initially, it checks for two conditions. If this condition holds true, then this while condition gets implemented. Or else, if both the conditions hold false, then the cursor comes outside of the loop. If this particular condition is false, then automatically the cursor moves to the second do statement. This is an example for nested loop. Here, initialize nck values and enter number of rows. If c equals 1, c is less than or equals n for c++, and this is the second condition. You have to printf and then return 0. Hit run, will get a suitable output of this program. Then moving on to break and continue statements. These are unconditional statements, unconditional structures. Now, what does a break and continue actually mean? The break statement, it terminates the loop immediately when it is encountered. And the break statement is used with decision making statements such as if else. Syntax of break statement is break semicolon. This is a flowchart of break statement. Enter a loop. If the text expression of the loop is true, then break. Then it moves to the break statement. And if it is false, then the loop gets terminated then and there itself. Now when it moves to break, here the break gets encountered. Then automatically when the break gets encountered, as per the definition of the break statement, the loop terminates. Now here, yes, the break is encountered and the loop is terminated. If the break doesn't get encountered, then the remaining body of loop gets executed. And an important note point here is for a break statement, only for loop condition is satisfied, and for a continue statement, while loop condition is satisfied. Now, coming back, how does a break statement actually work? While this text expression and here open flower braces. Here a suitable code is written. If the condition for break holds true, then here the break is executed. If the break is executed, the break gets executed only if condition holds true. Now when the break gets executed, then that's the end of loop. And when if the condition for break doesn't hold true, then the break doesn't get encountered, and automatically the cursor comes here outside of the loop and the second code gets executed. Now for initialization, condition and update, this is a second example. It's a suitable code is written over here, and if the condition of break holds true, then break gets executed and this is the end of the program. The program terminates then and there. Or else if the break statement is not encountered, then a suitable code which is after break gets executed. This is an example of break statement. To calculate the sum of maximum 10 numbers. Now, if a user uses negative number, the loop is terminated. And this is a break. Since this is true, now here the break gets executed. The break gets executed. This is the end of the program. Here, if instead of negative number, a positive number is written, then the break doesn't get encountered, and hence the code which is outside of the loop, the statements gets executed. Moving on to continue statement. The continue statement, it skips some statements inside the loop. The continue statement is used with decision making statement such as if else. Syntax for continue statement, it is continue semicolon. This is a flowchart of continue statement. A suitable loop is entered, and if the text expression of the loop is false, then automatically the loop gets terminated. If it is true, then it is sent for decision making. Continue. If continue holds true, then further next iteration is repeated. Then the process gets repeated, that is text expression of loop, and here the whole thing. If it is false, then remaining body of loop gets executed. Now, how does the continue statement work? While the text expression and the suitable code is written over here, if the condition for continue holds true, then again the iteration goes on repeating. Or else once it is false, then the code which is outside of the loop gets executed. Same for initialization, condition and update example. A suitable code is written over here, and if the condition for continue holds true, then continue gets encountered and the loop process gets repeated, or else the cursor moves to code which is outside of the loop. This is an example for continue statement. Here, if the negative numbers are skipped from calculations, here this user enters negative number, the loop is terminated. Since it's true, then continue gets executed. When continue gets executed, then it further moves to same the condition and all those things. It further comes, the cursor comes to double number and it checks again whether the condition holds true for all the numbers up to I less than or equals 10. Now, when the continue holds false, then the cursor comes outside of the loop and then this statement gets executed. Next, moving on to switch case statements. The if else statement, it allows a user to execute a block code among many alternatives. If we are checking on the value of a single variable in if else statement, it is better to use switch statement. It is an alternative of if else or if ladder statement. The switch statement, it is often faster than nested if else, but not always. Also, the syntax of switch statement, it is cleaner and easier to understand. This is syntax of switch case statement. Switch and case constant 1, code to be executed if n equals case constant 1. And here break, if this is true, Then when break gets encountered, this is the end of loop. But if it is false, then the case constant 2, it is tested, and the code to be executed if n is equal to case constant 2. Then break. If this case constant 2 is true, then once break gets encountered, then this is the end of loop. Or else, if both the case constants are false, then automatically the default loop gets executed. This is a flowchart of switch statements. If a single expression, whether it is equal to case constant 1, if yes, then code block 1 gets executed. If no, then case constant, it is checked for case constant 2 case for testing. If it is yes, then code block 2 gets executed. If it is false, then it is sent to case constant 3 for testing. If it is true, then code block 3 gets executed. If it is false, then default code is executed. Default code is also executed when all these 3 case constants are false. Now the program to write a switch statement. It is to create a simple calculator as multiplication, addition, arithmetic operations. Now the operator, it is a character type of data type. Then we should first double the first number, second number, and then printf, enter an operator of either addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Then scanf, percentile C, ampersand operator, enter 2 operands. That is first number, ampersand second number. And this is the program by using switch operator. This is a case 1, case 2, case 3, case /n. This is a default. Here, if the case 1 is true, then only the cursor goes to case 2, followed by case 3 and case /n. If all these 4 cases are false, then default case is executed. And then switch statement, it is another conditional structure. It is a good alternative of nested if else statement. It can be used easily when there are many choices available and only one should be executed. These are the 2 main conditions for which a switch statement holds true. And the syntax of switch statement, it is integer or character constant, case constant 1, statements, break, semicolon, case constant 2, statement, a break, a case constant n, and statement break. Here, the break holds true only when the given set of statements are true or the case constants are true. Now this is the example. Begin. If the case 1, it matches with the case statement 1, then the break gets executed and that's the end of switch. Or else the control goes to case 2. If it is true, then the break gets executed and the end. If it is false, then case n. If all 3 statements are false, then the default statement and the end of switch gets executed. That is the end of loop. Now to write a program that inputs number of weekdays and display the name of day. First, I have to enter a number of a weekday, of any weekday of a particular choice. And this is a case 1, count is less than Friday, break. Case 2, count is less than Saturday, break. If the count is actually less than Friday and this is a break, this is just the end of loop and Friday gets printed. If it is Saturday, then Saturday gets printed. And case 3, case 4, if it is Monday, then Monday gets printed automatically. The same goes with Tuesday and Wednesday as well. If all this 7 cases, all the weekdays are printed in the 7 cases. If all the 7 cases hold false, then automatically default invalid number gets printed. If any of the weekday is true, then the particular case, the case constant gets printed. Suppose if it's Wednesday, then case 6 gets printed. If it's Tuesday, then case 5 gets printed. And the same goes with the remaining cases as well. The next go to statement, it is used to alter the normal sequence of a C program. This is a go to and this is a label. Next, moving on, what is a label actually? A label is an identifier. When go to statement is encountered, the control of the program jumps to label. Here, we have encountered this situation. Here, whenever the go to gets encountered, the control of the program it jumps to the label. This is syntax of go to statement, go to, label, semicolon, label, and statement. The go to statement, it is used to move the control directly to a particular location of the program by using a label. A label is a name given to a particular line of the program. What is label? The label is an identifier. When go to statement is encountered, since we have seen here, a program automatically jumps from go to label. And it starts executing the code. Here, when go-to is encountered, it jumps to label, and the program which is written after the label gets executed, not go-to. The program which is written after go-to and before label one, it never gets executed. A label is created with a valid identifier followed by a colon. The syntax is as follows: go to, label, semicolon, the label. It indicates the label to which the control is transferred. Here, go to my label, the statement. These two statements are under go to. When go to gets encountered, then the control moves to my label, statement one, I mean the statement and the statement. Only the two statements which are under label gets executed. The statements which are under go to label never gets executed. Example, to write a program that displays C++ 5 times using a go to statement, and this is the example. And the next program, this is a program to calculate the sum and average of maximum 5 numbers. If a user enters a negative number, the sum and average of previously entered positive number is displayed. Since the computer, it understands binary language 0 and 1 and positive values. A negative numbers, if we enter the negative number, the computer, it can't take and further the processing, it never happens. So only positive numbers are preferred. If a user uses a negative number of enters a negative number, then the flow of program it moves to label jump. Label jump in the sense go to jump. The number is less than 0, go to jump. The sum equals sum plus number and jump. So once this go to gets executed, here once it go to gets executed, the count we have to since a label is not mentioned anywhere over here, so the end of the program it is implemented. If instead of end of program, for suppose a label, it gets executed in the way say mm, n is greater than 6, then automatically the cursor it comes to n is greater than 6, and this, if n is greater than equals 5, go to loop. That's end of this program. It never gets executed. Only once a label gets encountered, then the label statement only gets executed. And this is with jump statements. We have encountered this one. Here, since go to jump, in this sum equals sum plus number, it never gets executed. Only this statements after a label jump, these statements, they get executed. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation.